And I also hope that you are having a good day so far. So, today we will be doing our grade 5 English lesson on adjectives that compare. So, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on adjectives that compare. And before we start with our lesson on adjectives that compare, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca, we're going to log in with our username as well as our password. Then we're going to select the subject of language arts. And then we're going to choose grade 3. All right, so we're going to choose grade 5, sorry. Once we've chosen grade 5, you're going to scroll down up until you get to the chapter of adjectives that compare. I remember an adjective is a word that tells us more about the noun, right? It either tells us more about the noun or it describes the noun, right? That is an adjective. But adjectives that compare, right? It's like we will say, if we are comparing maybe two or more, if we compare, okay, let's say if you're comparing two people, right? Maybe in height, then we can maybe say that Sarah is taller than Jane, right? So if you are comparing someone, like if you're comparing two people and then we use the word, it's like your adjective, it ends in er. It's like we're adding er for like taller, shorter, longer, right? But if we are comparing more than two people, right? If you are comparing one person to a lot of things or a lot of other people, or you're comparing yourself to the whole class or a group of people, then we add est. For example, maybe you are the tallest in the class or the tallest out of all your friends, right? That is how we compare the adjectives or compare people. All right. So today our chapter is adjectives that compare. Our subject is English, which is language arts, grade 5. And our focus lessons for today under the chapter of adjectives that compare is to use adjectives to compare and to use adjectives with more or most. To use adjectives with more and most. All right. So you can use some adjectives to compare people, places, or things. And before we continue, we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. So if you do want to go back, recap, go over certain things, you can go to aplusstudents.ca. The chapter, subject, grade, as well as lessons is on the board. And then you can go and just recap, right? So we're on aplusstudents.ca. All right. So we can use some adjectives to compare people, places, or things, right? So we use adjectives to compare those things. That is why we usually say that maybe we get buildings, like if we compare places, we can say that is a big building, that is a small building, that is a tall building, that is a short building, or small building, right? Things, also we can compare people, right? Short and shorter, in height, right? Or in weight, or in size, or in anything. That is how you can compare people. And we are going to find out what we need to add, or let's say what rules to follow if we maybe compare two people, or what rules to follow when we compare more than two people. So when it comes to comparing, or adjectives that compare, right, we have two different types of adjectives. We have comparative adjectives and we have superlative adjectives. And a comparative adjective. Comparative adjectives, it compares two people, places, or things. And if we are comparing these two people, places, or things, and then they end in er, it ends in er, which means that we're going to add er to the end of our adjective. For example, he is taller than his sister. Taller, and we added an er, as you can see. And then we have a superlative adjective. And a superlative adjective, or superlative adjectives, it compares more than two people, places, or things, right? And they end in est. For example, we are comparing more than two people, right? So then we can maybe say he is the tallest person in his class. He is the tallest person in his class. So the same with us that is here on the live, right? If we maybe compare you to everybody else, then we add est. But if you're only comparing you to someone else, then our adjective ends in er. All right. All right. So once again, you can use some adjectives to compare people, places, and things. And then we have two different types of adjectives, which is a comparative adjective, and we have a superlative adjective. And with the comparative adjective, right, we compare two, either to people, places, or to things, right? And they usually end in er. And then we have a superlative adjective that compares more than two people, places, or things, and they end in est. All right, so now we're going to our tutorial lesson on A plus students.ca. So we are now by A plus students.ca. And the first lesson is to use adjectives that compare. We're going to use adjectives that compare. All right, so we said that you can use some adjectives to compare people, places, or things. And then we have comparative adjectives which compare two people, places, or things, right? And it ends in er. And then we have a superlative adjectives, which compares more than two people, and it ends in est, right? And remember, with adjectives, right, we can compare anything. Like we said, we can compare people, we can compare places, we can compare things, right? And there's a lot of things to compare, but we need to keep in mind that if we are comparing two people, then our adjective ends in er. If we are comparing more than two people, then it means that our adjective ends in um, in est. Sorry. All right. So now we're going to complete the sentence with the correct form of adjective. The woman who gave me her seat was the person on the bus. So the woman who gave me a seat was the, we need to add a certain word here, was the person on the bus. So we need to either compare, not compare, but we need to either say, was she a kinder person or was she the kindest person? We need to choose one of these two answers to answer our question or to complete our sentence. So we can then say the woman who gave me her seat was the, do we say, was the kinder person on the boat, on the bus? Or the woman who gave me the seat was the kindest person on the bus? All right. So if we choose the correct one, it says the woman who gave me a seat was the, so we say the kindest. So we can say that she is the kindest person. And why do we say the kindest person? Because we are comparing her to everybody else on the bus. Right? Usually a bus has got a lot of people because it's big, which means that it is comparing two or more people. So the woman who gave me a seat was the kindest person on the bus. So kindest is our adjective that compare. Sleepyhead Inn, right? It's like a hotel or motel. Sleepyhead Inn has the sheets, has the watch sheets of all the hotel in Sparrow Town. So we need to choose between the word softer or we say softest. So we say softer. We need to choose between one of these two. So Sleepyhead Inn has the, do we say softer sheets of all the hotels in Sparrowtown or the softest sheets of all the hotels in Sparrowtown? And in this case, they are comparing Sleepyhead Inn to basically all of the hotels in Sparrowtown, meaning that we are comparing Sleepy Inn to more than one hotel or more than two hotels. So do we say it's the softest sheets or softest sheets. Remember, we are comparing two or more people or two or more things. If we are comparing two or more things, we said that our adjective should end in est. We cannot say both. We either choose between softest sheets or the softest sheets of all hotels in Sparrow Town. So Sleepyhead Inn has the softest sheets of all hotels in Sparrow Town, or Sleepyhead Inn has the softest sheets of all hotels in Sparrow Town. All right, so if we choose our correct answer, we can then say, yes, that Sleepyhead Inn has the softest sheets of all hotels in Sparrow Town, which means that we are comparing Sleepyhead Inn to more than, let's say, more than one or more than two hotels in Sparrow Town. So softest, so well done if you have softest. So two or more things are being compared. The queen in that story, so the queen in that story is the, do we say is the meaner or meanest queen I've ever read about? So we either need to say either meaner or meanest. So the queen in that story is the, do we say is the meaner queen I've ever read about or meanest queen I've ever read about? And over here, if they are comparing her to a story, then it means that she's being compared to more than two people. So we say, do we say meaner or meanest? We are comparing more than two. And yes, we can then say that the queen in the story is the meanest because we are comparing her to all the other characters within the story. Right? We are comparing her manners to all the other characters within the story. So meanest is correct. So well done. All right, so now we're going on to our test. So we are going to complete the sentence with the correct form of adjective. Do you think that Shakespeare was the greater of all writer or greatest of all writers? Do you think that Shakespeare was the, do we say greater of all writers or greatest of all writers? So we need to choose between these two options, greater or greatest. All right, so which means that we're going to say, do you think that Shakespeare was the greatest of all writers? And why do we say greatest? Is because we are comparing two or more, let's say, writers, right? So we say the greatest of all writers. Greatest. So if you have greatest, well done. Good job. When Gabby was in hospital, Nurse McGee was a lot. Do we say kinder or kindest than Dr. Monroe? Kinder or kindest? So when Gabby was in hospital, Nurse McGee was a lot kinder or kindest than Dr. Monroe. Remember here we are comparing Nurse McGee to Dr. Monroe only, right? So here Gabby is comparing Nurse McGee to Dr. Monroe. So if we are comparing two people only, remember we said that our adjective it ends in er. But if we're comparing two or more people, and then our adjective ends in est. So so when Gabby was in hospital, Nurse McGee was a lot. Do we say kinder than Dr. Monroe or kindest than Dr. Monroe? Remember, if you're comparing two people, we say that our adjective it ends in er, but if we are comparing more than two people, and then our adjective ends in est. So Nurse McGee was a lot kinder than Dr. Monroe. So we will say she was a lot kinder, right? So I can say one person is kinder than the other person. But if I'm comparing that one person to a lot of other people, then we say this person is the kindest of all the other people. Because now I'm comparing her to more than two people. Then we say kindest or something ending in est. But if you're only comparing two people or two things or two places, and then we end in er. So if you said kinder, then well done. Kinder is correct. That statue is the piece of art in the whole museum. Here we are comparing that one statue to a piece of art in the whole museum. In the whole museum. Are we comparing two people, places, or things, or are we comparing more than two people, places, or things? What do you think? So, do we say that statue is the grandest piece of art in the whole museum, or that statue is the grander piece of art in the whole museum? Which one is correct? Grandest or grander? Our live is still on. All right, yes. So basically, if we say that the statue is the piece of art in the whole museum, then it means that we are comparing this one statue to maybe all the other art pieces in the museum, which means that we are comparing the statue to two more than two other pieces in the whole museum, right? So which means that we are going to say this is the grandest piece of art in the whole museum. So if you have grandest, then well done. Grandest is correct. Sleepyhead Inn has do we say, softer sheets of all the hotels in Sparrowtown, or Sleepyhead Inn has the softer sheets of all the hotels in Sparrowtown? So do we say Sleepyhead Inn has the softest sheets of all hotels in Sparrow Town, or Sleepyhead Inn has the softest sheets of all the hotels in Sparrow Town? All right, so we are basically comparing Sleepyhead Inn to all the other hotels in Sparrow Town, meaning there's probably more than two hotels in Sparrow Town. So we are definitely going to say has the softest sheets in all the hotels in Sparrow Town. So well done, softest is correct. In the movie, the astronaut said that the distant planet was, do we say the distant planet was warmer than Earth, or the distant planet was warmest than Earth? We are now comparing this one distant planet to Earth only. We are comparing two planets. Does it mean that our adjective is going to end in ER or EST? Remember, if we are comparing two people, places, or things, our adjective ends in ER. And if we are comparing two or more people, places, or things, and then our adjective ends in EST. So in the movie, the astronaut said that the distant planet was warmer than Earth, or was it warmest than Earth? We are comparing two planets. So we say that it is warmer, right? So in the movie, the astronaut said the distant planet was warmer than Earth. So warmer is our correct answer. Then, did you think that Mrs. Alvarado's nephew was the dancer in the whole dancing contest? So, did you think that Mrs. Alvarado's nephew was the, do we say stronger dancer in the whole dancing class, or the strongest dancer in the whole dancing contest? We need to choose one of these adjectives, either stronger or strongest dancer. But now he's being compared to everybody in the whole contest. Does it mean that our adjective is ending in ER or EST? It's being compared to, all right. So we can then say, do you think that Mrs. Alvarado's nephew was the strongest dancer in the whole dancing contest? All right. Now we're going on to the next lesson, which is to use adjectives with more or most. So you can use adjectives to compare people, places, or things, right? And comparative adjectives, it compared two people, places, or things. And they usually end in ER, right? So if we are comparing two people, places, or things only, then our adjective, it ends in ER. And that we call comparative adjective. But if we are comparing more than two people, places, or things, that usually ends in EST, and we call that a superlative adjective. And for most one syllable adjectives, right? So, which means that if the word only has one syllable, like for example, soft or tall or pretty, um, what word can we still use? Kind, kinder, right? Great. So these are all words that ends in. It's like it says one. It has one syllable, right? So usually, if it's got one syllable, then we either just add an er, or we just add an est to show the comparative as well as the superlative adjective, right? So then, for most one syllable adjectives, and for two syllable adjectives that end in y, the comparative adjectives, it ends in er, and the superlative adjectives ends in est. All right. Then we have base comparative superlative, right? Which means it's we have a base word, then we have a comparative word, and we have the superlative word. So the base word is, for example, the actual word before all the changes, before the comparisons. All right. So for most adjectives with more than one syllable, right, we add more to make comparative adjective. But we add most to make a superlative adjective. And if we look at the comparative adjective over here, the base of comparative is tall and superlative is tallest. It's, so here once again, with the superlative adjective, we have our base, we have a comparative and a superlative. The base word, for example, is maybe intelligent, more than one. Then we will have our comparative if we compare how intelligent you are, for example, to somebody else. You can say, I am more intelligent than Jack. But now someone else is, now you're comparing again to more than one person, then we say you are the most intelligent of the whole class, for example. And our base word is, for example, intelligent, comparative is more intelligent, and superlative is most intelligent. All right. Now we are going to complete the sentence with the correct comparative and superlative adjective. The angelfish is the, do we say is the more beautiful or is the most beautiful? So we need to say the angelfish. The angelfish was. Do we say it is more beautiful or do we say most? We need to choose one of these words. The angelfish is the, do we say the more beautiful or the most beautiful? Fish in the aquarium at school, which means that it's comparing two or more. All right, so we can then say that the angelfish is the most beautiful. The most beautiful fish in the aquarium at school. Then we need to complete our sentence with the correct comparative. Use with the correct comparative as well as superlative adjectives, right? So you can use adjectives to compare people, places, or things. All right. Here it says the news about the parade is what important for the news about the giant pumpkin. We are now comparing the news about the parade to the news about the giant pumpkin. So we are comparing two, only two. Do we say it is more important or most important? More important or most important? So do we say the news about the parade is more important or most important? Remember, we are comparing the news on the parade or about the parade to the news about the giant pumpkin. Remember, if we are comparing two things, people, animals, then we say it's a comparative adjective. Either ends in er. All right. So if we now compare that to, right, then we say it is more important. More important. So we say more. So more important. All right. So we didn't say more important. Now, the father chimpanzee was, do we say was strong, stronger, or strongest than mother chimpanzee? Do we now say strong, stronger, or strongest? The father chimpanzee was. All right, so now if we look at the sentence and we say the father chimpanzee was stronger. So here we say it is stronger than mother chimpanzee. So we said stronger. And then this, yes, we basically have it. So we said stronger. All right. So this is basically the adjectives that compare, right? And we said with adjectives that compare, stronger is correct. So we said with adjectives that compare, right? We either add an er when we're comparing um, to people, places, or things, or we add est if we are comparing more than two people, places, or things, right? And we said that if our syllables, right, is more than one, more than two syllables, right, and a word is long, like for example, beautiful, important, intelligent, right, then we add either more or most. More when it is comparing two or more people, places, or things, or most when we are comparing two or more people, places, or things. So before we end off, let us do our test, and we're probably going to do, like, let's say two answers or questions, and then we are done for the day. We need to say if it's a comparative or superlative adjective. Remember, comparative adjectives is we add more, and superlative we add most. To Nicole, knitting is a interesting hobby than stamp collecting. To Nicole, knitting is a interesting hobby than stamp collecting. So she's comparing knitting to stamp collecting, right? So which means that that is a comparative adjective. Do we say it is more interesting, or we say it is a most interesting hobby? More interesting or most interesting, or is it just interesting hobby? So Nicole, knitting is a, do we say a interesting, a more interesting, or a most interesting hobby? All right, so basically we can say to Nicole, she's comparing her knitting to stamp collecting, so we can say it is a more interesting hobby than it is for stamp collecting. The new math teacher for our class is kind than the old one. So we are comparing the new math teacher to the old math teacher. And if we are comparing two people, right, then it is a comparative adjective. We add er. But do we say it is kind, kinder, or most kind? And in this case, we can say it is kinder because we are comparing two people. All right. So this is now the end of our lesson on adjectives that compare. And we said when we are comparing adjectives, we have comparative adjectives and we have superlative adjectives, right? Comparative adjectives compare to people, places, or things, and superlative adjectives compare more than two people, places, or things. And with comparative adjectives and superlative adjectives, if our syllables are more than two syllables, right? Like, for example, intelligent, important, and so on, then we add for comparative, we say more, um, either more interesting, more important, more beautiful, or superlative, where we use the word most, where we're comparing still two or more things, right? So, grade 5, this is now the end of our lesson on adjectives that compare. Thank you very much for joining the class. Thank you very much for interacting, and you must have an amazing weekend further. Goodbye.